this one over here. Hello there. Hopefully you can hear me. Quick show of hands if you can hear me. So we're actually live on Facebook. A little bit of toying with the technology, shall we say? So we'll begin in a minute. Let's get going. It's Tuesday afternoon, just after 2 p.m. This is the Party Wall Guy, and welcome to Question Time with the Party Wall Guy. Just going to make sure we're all go. I think we are live on Facebook. Yes, got a couple of questions in, and you should be able to see my screen. So let's make a start. Welcome, Tuesday after 2. Let's get going. Quick housekeeping, usual stuff. This is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting, just to protect your privacy. And keep your questions coming in. No fire alarm at this end scheduled, so if there's a fire alarm, it's a real thing. My exit's over there. I can't help you with your exits. Hopefully you know where yours are. Yeah, if you're watching this webinar on a phone, it might look something like this depending on which phone it is. If you've got any questions, go to the bottom and type in your questions there. Keep your questions coming in as and when you think of them. If I lose internet connection, I've got a spare, so it'll take about a minute or two to boot up on the second hosting provider. If you guys disconnect from your Wi-Fi, just stay with it, and Zoom should automatically reconnect you. Make sure my shirt's adjusted. Yes, there will be recordings on this. It'll be on the YouTube channel. They're coming out. There's about a month delay between, so we're also simultaneously broadcasting live on Facebook Live with our sponsors, the property partners, the property professionals. They're one of our sponsors and partners. We broadcast live on their Facebook as well. And the YouTube recordings are loaded in about a 4 to 5 week delay. So if you want the full recordings, they'll be coming on the YouTube channel. The channel's 1996 Party Wall. If you want to watch them live, these are on Facebook Live. So just a briefing. Still going through an update on my book. If you come across it on Amazon, hold off on buying it yet. If you could stay muted, that would be helpful. Just saves background noise. So thank you very, very much for showing up and coming to this little question time. So quick introduction to myself. My name's Dil Gujral. I'm the Party Wall Guy, the Chief Surveyor at 1996 Party Wall. Hopefully from the name, it's obvious what we do. We're specialist Party Wall surveyors. We're really excited and proud to be sponsored by the Property Investor News. Mr. Ranjit's here with us. They're also the property professionals. We're being broadcast live on their Facebook, and the aim of the property professionals is to provide knowledge and know-how on the property matters, and we're proud to be one of their contributors. So this is a usual question and answer format, so keep your questions coming in. Hopefully I've answered the question whether you can hear me or not. Thank you for that. I was on an interview a week or so ago on a Saturday with somebody else's show, and somebody asked me this question. They said they knew someone who does party wall work as well as they were actually talking about an architect, and they were saying, basically the question is, how do I choose the right party wall surveyor? So just thinking about it, of course I'm going to say me, but their answer may not help you. You know, there's other party wall surveyors out there, so that's going to be a slightly silly reply. got a question coming in, so I'll come to that in a minute. So the way you select the right party wall surveyor, these are the questions you should ask, and depending on the response, you'll know if they know their stuff or not. So first question to ask is how are notices served? Now, if they don't talk about doing a certificate of posting, i.e. they'll say, I'll do the notices, I'll give it to you and you serve it to your neighbor, and they don't go into discussing certificate of posting, or they say we're going to send it recorded delivery, they're not your guys. They don't know this stuff. They don't know how the process works, and they don't know the importance of the certificate of posting in terms of the second part of the follow-on process. The second question to ask them is, what happens if the neighbors do not reply? Now, if they say you can carry on, or they don't explain the 10-4 process to you, then again, these guys do not know their stuff. So stay clear of them. So what they should say is, if they don't reply, we send them a reminder letter. I've gone through a 10-4 process a number of times, but I'll go through it in a future date as well. So if they don't talk about the 10-4 process, or they tell you once you've served a notice, you could carry on with your works, that's common error. It's far more common than I'd like, or than that's needed. So stay clear of those guys. They're actually, they don't know what they're doing. Avoid them. Okay. Third question to ask them is, what are the costs? Now, the reason you ask for the costs is not just to get a quote for their costs, but a reasonably good party wall surveyor should talk about the potential costs of adjoining owner surveyors being appointed. Now, if they don't discuss this issue and discuss it in a little bit of detail, then I would say they haven't had sufficient experience in this field. So that's one of the other pointers to look out for. And the fourth question to ask them is timescales. If they give you a definite timescale, then they haven't had enough experience. So with party wall matters, the timescale is dependent upon the neighbors replying, the cooperation, and how well they interact with you. Unfortunately, the actual reply is, it's a range between 1 week to 3 months, depending on the neighbors' reactions and cooperation and so forth. But if someone gives you a definite timescale, it's an indication that they don't know how this process works fully. So these are some of the thoughts I've had. Please keep your suggestions coming in. But if you're looking at these 4 points, that should give you a pointer to the level of experience the prospective party wall surveyors had. It'll give you an indication of the knowledge level, of how the process works, and the main things you should be looking out for. So hopefully that's helping you answer that question. If you've got further questions, keep them coming in. Before I answer the next question, I'm going to go through a little question that we had as an ongoing series I've been doing. So with regards to party wall, the question is, why do we do party wall? Who does it? What needs to be done? When do we carry out the process? Where do we carry it out, and how? So this is a series I'm going to be running in the background. And last week we did why. We'll come review that in a minute. Next question we're going to look at is, who should carry out the party wall process? So, okay, who needs to carry out the party wall process? And to go through this, we need to go through some basic terms. Building owner. Now, there's only one building owner. That's the person. It could be a legal entity as well, or wishing to carry out the works. So they're defined as a building owner in terms of the Act. It's only one of those. It can be a freeholder, it can be a leaseholder, it can be an individual, it could be a corporate body, and by corporate body, limited company, charity, other organizations. It's basically the owner of the property. And once again, it doesn't have to be a freeholder, it could be a freeholder or a leaseholder. Each of those has its own complications. If you're a leaseholder, you need to make sure you have freeholder's consent. So that's one definition. So that's building owner who carries out the party. they're actually responsible for starting the party wall process. I'll discuss this bit in the next slide. On the other side, we have adjoining owners. Now, there's multiple classes of adjoining owners, and you can have multiple owners within each class. The first class to be aware of are freeholders. You could have the scenario where you've got a terrace house and there's two houses next door that are notifiable. They're both freeholders. So freeholders are notifiable. You could also have, in the same setup of buildings, you could also have surrounded by two terrace houses, two properties. And again, part of those properties are sold on long leases. So in that case, you've got the freeholder that's notifiable, also leaseholder. Now, please note, it's more than 1 year. Now, quite important issue to understand here. Leaseholders are more than 1 year can also mean there's an important group that gets left out. Where you've got, and this largely occurs in commercial leases, but not exclusively, you're also getting longer term leasehold contracts for residential property. That could be where houses are leased out to housing associations or other companies that rent the property and rent it further out. Usually their leases are more than 1 year, but less than 7 years. And in that scenario, they don't often register their leases on the land registry because there's no requirement for leases under 7 years to be registered. Because party wall surveyors pick up the adjoining owners from land registry, it means these leaseholders get left out. So it's important for these leaseholders of between 1 to 7 years to be notified, but that's a group that you have to look at. So as a building owner, you need to be aware of there may be leaseholders that haven't been captured by the process so far. The next set of owners that need to be notified are those that have right to receive profits. So for this group, it could be people with a purchase lease option, could be where they've got a rent to rent agreement. It could be a whole bunch of other things. It could even be trustees within a property. So that's a group that is odd, and it's and they often come to light after the initial notices are sent or later down the process. So you need to be aware of those group as well. And lastly, but not least, and these are quite important as well, are when a adjoining owner's property has an exchange of contract, whereby they're about to sell their property, haven't completed yet, but have exchanged. Now, as soon as you neighbours exchange on a contract, they become notifiable owners. And the way to handle this in residential scenarios, where you've got a property that's about to be sold, they've exchanged, and be aware it's not when they go under offer, it's when the contracts are exchanged. So once they exchange, they're under a legal requirement, they're under a legal contract. It is a good idea to start talking to them when the adjoining owner's property comes under offer, but that depends on the adjoining owners being open to you. So occasionally we get times where we serve a notice, the adjoining owner comes back to the building owner, "Hi, John. Hi, Kate. It's all right. We don't need a notice. We're about to sell our house. We've had an offer accepted." And in that scenario, you should try and engage with the new owners, because although they're only notifiable at the point when the contract exchanges, assuming it does exchange, those will be the guys that will be notifiable under the Party Wall Act. And if it's done in time before your works are carried out, the current owners will drop out. So a Party Wall award is particular to owners of the property rather than the properties themselves. Groups that are not included are short-hold tenants. Again, council tenants. Now, council tenants may be there for a number of years, but they're not included, so they're not notifiable, although the council would be as a donor. And last but not least, mortgage companies. Mortgage companies, although they have a first charge on property, they're not notifiable owners. So going on to the question of who, this is also part of the process. So who needs to be done and how the process works. So the process needs to be started by the building owner. And here there's an important term that gets misused. We often get phone calls from building owners saying, well, we're doing an extension. We sent a party wall agreement to the neighbors and they didn't reply. What do we do? So first of all, definition of terms is always important discussing anything in especially law, but generally a party wall notice is not a party wall agreement. It's simply a notice that you're going to do works. So it's up to the building owner to start the process. And they do so by serving it to the adjoining owners. And it's got to be done in writing. And often people go and have a chat over the fence, say, hi mate, we're thinking of building an extension. Would that be okay? That doesn't work well because you still need to issue the notice. So you're better off taking the notice with you and saying, hi, we're thinking of doing an extension or a loft conversion. Here are our plans. Here's a notice. Here's the paperwork. But also, more importantly, the second point, you need to follow it through by posting the same notice. So that proves that you've actually served the notice to the neighbours. Again, that ties into the 10-4 process. Oddly enough, and this is where the timing issue comes in, whereby you can't be precise on the timing, stage 2 is decided by the adjoining owners. Now, with the Party Wall Act, it's a two-way thing. It's a two-way law designed to protect the building owner, designed to ensure that the building owner can carry out works. But on the other side, it's also there to ensure that the adjoining owner's property is protected. So in this scenario, the adjoining owner's response decides how the process progresses. So they can respond in a number of ways. They can consent to the works, and consent here is an odd word. It's used in the law. Consent doesn't mean they can stop your works. It just means they can say, well, we'll accept your proposal. And here it's advisable to carry out a schedule of condition survey. A schedule of condition survey is basically a survey of their property. It's largely photographic, which documents the imperfections, the faults, and the damage that's existing in the property before works begin. Very similar to when you go and rent a car, and they usually take photographs of the car to log what's the current damage there. And the whole idea of a schedule of condition is to protect the building owner from false and malicious claims. So you could get the scenario where we've done a survey, there's existing cracks in the wall, and if we hadn't done that, the building owner would have got the blame. So it's important for building owners to understand that the party wall process is there to help them. It stops malicious claims and malicious and false claims from the neighbour. The other option that the adjoining owners have is to ask for a party wall award. And this is what can be termed as a party wall agreement. This is a legal document which sets out the rights and responsibilities of both parties. Now, there's a number of ways this can be done. They can either they can agree to use your surveyor. So you can have what's called an agreed surveyor. And in most cases, most residential cases where there's not a basement being done, we are allowed to act as agreed surveyor. Where you've got more complex residential works or more complex works or basements, we're not really allowed to act as agreed surveyor. So that in that case, each owner has their own surveyor. But this option or this decision is made by the adjoining owner. It's always worth having discussions with the adjoining owner. The other thing that's contained in the party wall award is it's a dispute resolution procedure, so it's there to stop extra legal costs and going to court. And there's a process in there that determines how damage can be decided without the need for going to court. So it helps the building owner. It also protects the adjoining owner. The schedule of condition is there to gather the pre-start damage, so that if there's a pre-start condition, so that if there's damage, we've got a comparable baseline. So, and the other thing about party wall process is who should carry it out. So it is the responsibility of the building owner. usually when they're carrying out home extensions. Also, where you've got property developers, this could be anything that goes from refurbishing one single house. So they bought an investment property, or they're going to, what's termed as a flip, they're going to buy it, do it up and sell it on, all the way to massive commercial projects. So property developers need to be aware. The other people that need to be aware are bridging and development finance companies. Now, I know I said that mortgage companies aren't notified. That's true. The reason financiers need to be aware of this is if they're lending on development and bridging and they haven't approached this subject with their client or the people they're loaning the money to, it could mean that they start a project, comes to a stop in the middle, and therefore it incurs extra costs and problems. Whereas they should really ask their developer question, have you done with the party wall process, or have you got arrangements to deal with it? It's much better to get it done in the beginning rather than right in the middle when works are held up. Another group that need to be aware of the party wall process is property managers stroke investors. Now, their interaction with the Party Wall Act is as adjoining owners. So imagine a situation where you've worked hard, you're a landlord or you're a developer or you manage a portfolio for a housing association, and you have to keep your property portfolio up to date. You've worked hard. So getting it up to date means you've received a notice from next door. Don't ignore it because you need to do something. Not giving them access means that there's no basis on doing a schedule of condition, so your position is weakened. So please ensure that you act correctly and take advice. Now I'll put architects down, and they seem to be the key to everything. For most homeowners who've never done an extension or a loft conversion, thought it's a good idea, we can get some extra space, particularly in the current circumstances where everyone's locked up, they need extra space, they've been working from home, they're thinking, well, maybe you could convert the loft, set up an office there, or maybe we go and have an extension so we could do a little home office, whatever. First port of call is someone drew the plans up, so they come to architects. And some architects do some party wall process, some don't, and some muck it up in the middle. So it's important for architects to understand the process properly and make up their minds whether to do it. That's fine. If they don't do it, they should also understand not to do it. So that's a different conversation. So last week I discussed why we should do the party wall process. I'm just going to recap that quickly. First of all, a schedule of condition protects the building owners from false and malicious claims. Secondly, it stops your project being stopped midstream. So it's better to do it right at the front before builders and contractors get on site. It is the building owner's responsibility. So it's not one of these laws that you can say, that you can delegate. So you can't say, I told my project manager to do it, I told my architect or my builder was doing it. You can't delegate it. It's a bit like health and safety. You also want to take it out because it prevents legal action, i.e. if it goes wrong and the neighbor takes an injunction, that's going to cost you a lot more money to resolve and deal with than if you'd done it in the first place. So however expensive you think a party wall process is, and it's usually because people aren't aware of it, not made aware of it, or haven't penciled in some budget for it, you do not want to try dealing with an injunction. That's even more expensive. And last but not least, the de facto position in the country, this is the law. If you're not aware of the law, it's not an excuse. You can't say, I didn't know. So please make sure you understand your obligations. Got some questions that I'd like to go into, and we've just got them today. So let's have a little look through them. DPM is being inserted into the building owner side of the party wall due to dampness on the building owner side. The party wall agreement. So, question for you here: If a damp-proof membrane, I'm assuming they mean if you're doing damp-proofing, it's being inserted into the building owner's side due to damp coming into the building owner's side. Is a party wall agreement necessary? So you've got a scenario where, and I'm assuming this is where you're sharing the wall rather than your front wall or your back wall or a wall that you're not sharing. I would say yes, because mostly because you're going to be doing significant work. Now there is a clause in the Party Wall Act where if work is de minimis, you don't need to notify neighbours. Issues with damp courses is significant amounts of work. So there's significant drilling that goes on, and it is one of these pieces of work that's known as notifiable. So it's accepted in the industry that if you're doing damp course or damp proofing work, you should notify the neighbours and carry out the party wall process. And here I'm assuming you're working on the party wall, you're not working on your front or your back wall. I realise people think, well, that's a bit rubbish, isn't it? Because it's not significant amounts of work. It may not have any impact. The issue to understand is you don't know the makeup of the wall. You don't know the impact it'll have on the other side. And it always goes by the general understanding. If in doubt, you should notify. So yes, notify if you're doing damp-proof work. How do you work out the cost of damage and in a draft damages award? Is there any examples that can be shown? How do you work out the cost of damage, and is there examples that we can be shown? So the damage is quite an interesting one. It's actually a cause for a lot of debate among forums and further training for party wall surveyors. Before you start, as a surveyor, before you start to work out the cost of damage, you should actually, if you're a adjoining owner surveyor, you should actually ask either part, ask the adjoining owners whether they'd want it repaired or whether they want to accept the financial compensation. Now, it's up to the adjoining owner to understand, to choose. So the adjoining owner might say, no, you're okay, just come and silicone out, paint it, and that's fine. That's okay. Or they may say, no, I don't want to accept a repair, I'd like compensation. And then you go into a compensation process whereby they'll get an estimate, or they'll say, we'd like this much compensation, whatever it is. And it's for the building, and it usually gets passed from surveyor passes it on back to the building owner. And the building owner say, yeah, it's a bit high, but let's accept it, let's get on with it, I don't mind. Or they might say, it's too high, it's only worth X, Y, Z, goes back. And in which case, if you've done it once or twice, what you need to then do is say, well, they can't decide. And then that becomes a dispute. And then it's for the surveyors to determine. And usually you might have to bring in a QS, or it might be a case of get 2 or 3 estimates, put it across to the other surveyor, and between the surveyors they can decide. Where it's an agreed surveyor, it's for the agreed surveyor to decide. So if the adjoining owners and the building owners can't agree, then it goes to the surveyors to decide, and they'll do so and put it in an award. The award can be appealed by the building or the adjoining owner. The problem is, unless the damage is significant and the costs, it usually doesn't go that far. There is case law where a house was demolished and the compensation was only, the compensation was the value of the original house minus what the site could be sold for. So it wasn't a case of that the building was replaced, it was a financial compensation scenario in that law case. Next question. Property developer has a tire garage situated between 2 residential houses and is about to be demolished, made into 4 flats. What pre-work requirements should a party wall surveyor be looking into for the building owner? Okay, got a Quite an interesting question, actually. A little bit complex, but good fun. A property developer has a tire garage situated between two residential houses and is about to demolish and construct 4 flats. What pre-work requirements should a party wall surveyor be looking into from the building owner, i.e. drawings, CCTV drain surveys, program of works, demolition process? Okay, so yes, you should look at the drawings of the proposed scheme. Now, when it comes to demolition, are they going to be exposing a wall that's previously been weatherproofed? So, for example, down Hounslow High Street many years ago, this is now the access way to the new ESDA they've built. It used to be an old C&A, and I'm showing my age here. So, imagine the High Street, and at that point they were all terrace buildings. So they literally demolished the C&A building there, nothing left. And for a while, the next door building that was affected, it was covered up with felt and batten. And I thought, that's a bit odd, you know, you're going to leave it like that. But eventually they bricked it up and created a permanent wall next to it. So what you have to do is, if you're taking away a building that's adjoining a neighbor's building, you need to weatherproof that party wall. The more common example of residential works is where you've got 2 garages joining and one garage decides to demolish their garage, but the wall in the middle is a party wall. So unless that's going to be built up again and extended and covered up, if they're going to leave that exposed, they need to weatherproof it. So you need to, and that's notifiable works in this section 2.2. So that's a notice they should give for notice for weatherproofing. You, as an adjoining, and I'm assuming you're talking about as an adjoining owner, here, you need to assess the project. Have they given you the right type of notices? The program of works. Now, the program of works is mainly used to, one of the reasons it's used is to work out if they need access, and access is granted under section only for pursuance under the Act. So if they're building on the line of junction, not because the builders want it or it's convenient. This is a point on line of junction. If you're not building on the line of junction, you're building even literally 25 mil away, you don't have a right of access. So it's only rights of access are only granted if there's works in pursuance of the Act. The other question is about drain surveys. So drain surveys can be carried out depending on the position of the drain. Sometimes the building owners say, well, because they share the drain, that they know they're going to need it in working order anyway. They'll say there's no point doing a CCTV drain survey. We'll accept it's working. If it's not, we'll say it's our fault. So that's one way around it, but it just depends on the positioning of the drain and the likely impact. The other point mentioned here is the works on the demolition process. So when there's demolition process, that is actually, unless you're cutting away or exposing something to weatherproofing, got a project going on actually. This is what I'm thinking about as well. And I sat there and I thought, in the demolition process, what happens? So your compliance is health and safety. It's not about the party wall necessarily. Now, health and safety is a different subject to the Party Wall Act. So it's not for party wall surveyors to determine health and safety. And that's why in most awards, you should say health and safety is beyond our scope. So we're not there to get involved with health and safety. We're just there to deal with the party wall issues. The other thing we need to check for is, have they missed the party wall, something that's notifiable? For example, if they're going to be digging, are they digging within 3 meters? And do they need to give a section 6 notice? If they're going to be building on a line of junction, is the boundary agreed between the owners? Will they need access to build that wall? Other questions, I think this come in. Okay. Regarding chimney breast in the loft again, if the award has been finalized, initial drawings um, annex to the award showed steel beams sporting below the chimney with spreader plates. The builder now wants to add new steel support above the chimney breast. Can they go ahead, do so, or how would this now be annexed to an award? Okay, so just to recap on this, what's happened is they've done an award. It's for the removal of chimney. Initially, the chimney was to be supported by spreader plates and a steel, and now that they want to put a steel above the chimney. So the basic principle here is that the scope of the works has changed, so that notifiable works are changed, and in which case, in most awards, there's a condition saying that if the work on the awards changes, they need to do this needs to be notified to the surveyors in writing. It's basically that the proposal's changed and they have to reconsider. In which scenario you could do it by letter and just exchange letters, or what you could do is do what's called a further award. Now, the incorrect phrase that's used is, I think they're using annex here, annex to the award. Addendum is also used. Addendum's actually incorrect. It's a further award. So that's an industry sort of thing that goes on. But you'll often hear the phrase further award. The correct process, addendum award. It's not an addendum, it's a further award. So which means you can alter the first award by making a further award, which refers to the first award. So yes, it can be altered. Ideally, if there's any changes in the process, you should create a further award which says, references the first award and says, these are the changes that are being made. And that could be position of the support and steel and so forth, depending on the scope of the change. So hopefully that answers your question. I think we've run over time again. So thank you very much for your attendance. Now, I'd like to bring on one of our sponsors, Mr. Ranjit Singh. Let me see if I can. Hello there. Promote to panelist. Right. Mr. Ranjit Singh, are you there?
Good afternoon. Yes, I'm here. How are you?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's good to have you with us. I hope you enjoyed that little question and answer session.
It's always enjoyable. You learn something new every time.
Yeah, we had quite an interesting session. So please send me new slides. I think you've got a new magazine that you'd like to discuss. So over to you,
Yes,
sir.
I will do that. Thank you, Dil. Good afternoon. My name is Ranjit from Property Investor News. A new world ahead for the bold and the brave. Education is the only weapon to be successful. No matter what business you're in, property is no different. Prepare yourself for changes, challenges, and opportunities ahead. Become educated, knowledgeable, informed investor. And our publication provides you analysis, news, research on property investments. Also updates on mortgages, auction, finance, legal matters, and much, much more. We have a time-limited offer. Receive 3 free issues plus our 200th June issue and a free book, auction book before the hammer falls by 2 auction experts. Main theme for our June 200th issue is student sector review and much, much more. To subscribe, just follow the instructions in the chat box. I'll leave you with this. We're in challenging and changing times, and there are going to be setbacks. Just remember, when you get a setback, do not sit back. Only step back to bounce back. behind every setback, there is an opportunity. Thank you, Dil, for having us.
Thank you for being here, and really, I think you're wasted. You should be a poet. So thank you for that. And just a quick word from one of our other sponsors, Wren Kitchens. These guys are based in East London. So Beckton, if you've got a project or your client needs any help, contact Sanjay and just let him know you were notified from us, and he promises me he'll look after your client and give you excellent service. If you've ever seen Sanjay on one of our broadcasts, I don't know what he's on. He must be extra large Red Bull doses. So it's always full of go. So great guy. Please contact him. And once again, thank you for being here. It's actually flown by. I didn't realize what the time was. Please keep your questions coming in. It's getting really interesting with the number of questions we've got coming in and the little debate we have. So thank you very much. And we'll see you next Tuesday, 2 o'clock.
Thank you very much.